I want to start with Dolores, not just because you are, again, the living legend, but you have a backstory that if people aren't aware of, I did want to share. So in 1962, Dolores and Cesar Chavez, yes, established the National Farm Workers Association, which became the United Farm Workers Union, the UFW. She organized the 1965 grape strike of over 5,000 workers that won workers basic human rights like decent drinking water, bathroom breaks, and the right to union representation. Yes, amazing. And after 70 years of activism, Dolores, you are still working to protect the most vulnerable workers among us, which, by the way, today feels like all workers, frankly. Thank you for everything you've done. Truly, it is absolutely an honor to have you here. So, Dolores, suffice to say, it's a very painful time for a lot of people, especially Latino immigrants, Latino workers, Latino Americans, specifically in California and beyond.
What has been the most shocking thing to you about the last few months? And you have seen it all at this point, or so you thought, right? What has been the most shocking thing, and what is a story about this that we aren't seeing in the media? What are you hearing within your organization and your community about what's happening on the ground that we maybe aren't witnessing?
Well, I believe the most shocking thing is when you have people in political office, people that are senators and congressmen that have become complete cowards. Complete cowards.
Yes.
When we see the way that our immigrants are being treated, and when you talked about the farm workers, when we were organizing farm workers, you mentioned that farm workers got bathroom breaks. No, they didn't even have bathrooms. I mean, one of the big ones was to get bathrooms in the field. Getting rid of the short handle hoe so that people could use a long handle hoe and accomplish the same thing, and they wouldn't have to be subjugated to be close to the ground and have this kind of suffering and the disabilities that came from that. So this racism that exists in our society, and Martin Luther King Jr. said that racism is an illness that we have in the United States of America. It's a sickness, and we have not been able to get rid of that sickness, and now we see it manifested in what's happening right now, and especially with people of color, because these are the ones that are being targeted by ICE and the Trump administration and trying to, I'm going to use the word, make America white. It's never been white, okay? It's never been white. I mean, when my great-grandparents, or great-great-grandparents, two of them on my mother's side, they were the immigrants that came. One from Spain, the other one from England. On my dad's side, the native people, they were already here to greet them, okay? Before they got here. So that is the true history of the United States of America. And so to criminalize hardworking people like the farm workers that feed the president and feed this congressman, they're the ones that have been subjected to all of this brutality. And in the past, yeah, people come here because they want to have a better life for their families, you know? We've always been, as we say, a nation of immigrants, even though most of those came from Europe, okay? But the idea that you punish people because they want to have a better life for their families is very cruel. And back in the 50s, when they had these same type of deportations and, repatriating, that's what they did. They repatriated people. They took people to the border and sent them home. They did not put them in prisons, okay? They did not put them in prisons. That has been, you might say, more recent legislation, mostly under the Bush administration, when that started happening. So we don't have to treat people that way. And think of this, $45 billion. $45 billion that is going to be used for ICE and to detain people and to build these prisons. That $45 billion, we need that money for education, we need that money for housing, we need that money for health care. So we can see that, the needs are turned upside down. And we, as citizens, have to really speak up and demand that this not happen again. And we have to start working for the future. Working for the future. What do we want things to look like when this nightmare is over? What are the things that we do not have in the United States of America, the richest country in the world? We do not have free college education. We do not have universal health care. We do not have daycare for our families so our children can become educated and cared for while people work. The richest country in the world. So we've got to start making plans. What do we want when this crazy period is over? And start demanding and start working to make those things happen. And I like to quote the poet Pablo Neruda, who said, "They can cut all the flowers, but they cannot hold back the spring." They can cut all the flowers, but they cannot hold that back the spring. And we have to be the gardeners. We have to be the people that are out there sowing the seeds of justice and erasing the ignorance and conquering this illness of racism that exists here in our society. I think that all of us have to do that. And we shouldn't wait for people to ask us. We have to initiate that. End the racism, end the sexism, and the sexism, again, the attacks on our LGBTQ community, We have to stand up for that, for women's right to abortion, okay? We have to do that. All of us have to become organizers and messengers to get that message out to everybody that we know, even if it is uncomfortable. That's okay. That's okay if it's uncomfortable. We have to make people feel uncomfortable, because when we can think of how people are being tortured in these prisons, how their families are being affected, making somebody uncomfortable to try to get into their brains and their hearts, I think it's a very small thing to ask.
I think we're beyond uncomfortable at this point. I think uncomfortable is behind us. Like, we're in deep pain mode, I think. And we're all hurting, even if we're not being directly affected. It hurts to know this is happening. So you have a lot of homework from Dolores, from leaving here today. We'll get back to next steps in a moment after we hear from the panelists. Thank you, Dolores. You're amazing. And I'd like to talk to Eric. He said I could call him Eric, even though I want to say Dr. Esrailian, because I was raised to use the titles. So outside of your esteemed work as a gastroenterologist at UCLA, you are also a leading voice in helping to rethink and reform the way we think about foster children in this country. Alongside of your friend and partner, Christian Bale, we've heard of him, amazing guy, you created an organization called Together California Foster Care. So, like many systems in our country right now, it's broken, undervalued, and underfunded, our current foster care approach. What are the key tenets of what you and Christian are trying to infuse into this? I don't want to call it a process. It's more of an existence, a temporary existence, hopefully, for kids. And what is unique about the way that we have approached this previously?
Well, thank you so much. First of all, it's an honor for me to be here, and thank you for allowing me to talk a little bit about Together California. And for those of you who are hoping to see Christian Bale, I'm sorry.
But he is really good at changing his look for movies.
That's true.
How do we know it's not Christian Bale?
Yes, very well said. It's an honor for me to have a chance to talk about Together California. And, in Los Angeles County, we have the largest population of foster youth in the United States. And that's something I didn't know until I really started to talk to Christian about something that we could work on together. And he's an incredible partner and very passionate about this issue. And he wanted to do something, we've been very fortunate in our lives. So we want to do something together to give back to our community. And so I started really learning about the situation for foster youth. And besides the fact that LA County has such a large population, many of these foster youth or children who go through the foster system unfortunately end up being homeless. And roughly 75% of the kids who end up in foster system, also brothers and sisters, end up being separated, and they might not actually be reunited until they're adults. And by that point, their entire lives can be disrupted. And many children end up in foster care because of neglect or child abuse or other issues in the family. So I think it became really important for us. And, we both are kind of, I think, know just enough to be dangerous. So we didn't know anything about this. But we partnered with an incredible person named Tim McCormick, who's our executive director. And Tim has done this very successfully in Illinois in a model that keeps siblings together with a professional parent. So the role of the parent in this model is that they basically are full-time parents. They have a home. And we're building a village in LA County, actually in the city of Palmdale. So we partnered with the city of Palmdale and the county of Los Angeles, who actually gave us quite a bit of support. We were able to purchase land, and we're building 12 homes, which each home will have a foster parent, and 6 children can live in that home. And we're also building 2 basically studio apartments for transitional housing and for birth parents to possibly come and stay as well, because they might be able to be reunited with their children, and then a community center. So the concept is to basically build a community. So we're calling it Together California because the goal is to keep families together. And I'm really happy to say this has been embraced by LA County, City of Palmdale, and also the leadership of our community, government officials, really across the board. Catherine Barger in County of Los Angeles has been incredible, as well as Mayor Bass and the Mayor of Palmdale. And it's just, a friend of mine said to me, this is only 70 kids, but it's 70 kids forever. And I think over time, if we can even change the lives and trajectories of just 1 or 2 of these children, you never know what they're going to do to give back to society, give back to their communities. So it's heartwarming. And I appreciate the opportunity just to talk about it, because we've kind of kept it under wraps until we were really ready. We've broken ground. Hopefully we'll have a ribbon cutting on the first homes in March. And I know word is starting to get around, because yesterday I was telling somebody about this, and they said, you should talk to Christian Bale, because it sounds like he's doing something like this too. So it made me feel good that, like, okay, there's a reason for me to stand in front of a microphone.
That's so incredible. Thank you. And I know it's too soon. You haven't actually put this all into practice yet, but is this a model that others can draw from for helping the unhoused? I mean, this concept, no offense, doesn't seem super like it took a team of scientists to come up together. I mean, it's just sitting there, but you're putting it into practice. But can we use this for other communities who are struggling?
I think the goal is to create, first of all, not just one village, but villages all throughout California. So that's why we call it Together California. And yes, there are other organizations that are doing something like this in different states. It's just ironic that California didn't have this and LA County didn't have this. So especially with the challenges facing people who are suffering from homelessness, and the fact that a lot of these life stories are interlinked. So if we can kind of solve a problem such as improving the foster care system, it will also help with homelessness. And I have to say also the Department of Child and Families, DCFS, Child and Family Services, has been incredibly helpful to us, and they've embraced it. So I think this will be a partnership with actual existing structures, and give more people an opportunity to have a path forward.
Thank you so much for everything you've done. And that's just one of like 1,000 projects that this man does in his free time. It's really inspiring. Thank you so much. Yes. And Sydney, it's so nice to see you again.
Pleasure.
Sydney was a star panelist who I met last year and was incredible, and I expect nothing less tonight, my friend. So Sydney, it's not an understatement to say you're a trailblazing voice for trans storytellers, but also just artists in general. And actually, you made history when you became the first Black trans man to become a member of the WGA. That is very cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I think it's suffice to say that attacks on the LGBTQ plus community are at unprecedented levels. Very scary time. But for you, you see education as a way to ameliorate some of this pain, not to fix it overnight, but it is what you would say is like a weapon against these attacks. Tell me how you see yourself as an educator, because you just came back from London. You actually are sort of an ambassador, and you put yourself out there into communities that are both queer and trans, but also communities that are cis and otherwise. What have you learned about how education can combat this kind of terror?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say. I mean, first, I have to admit, as a trans man, I didn't realize I'd have to cross my legs on stage with a kilt. So please excuse me.
Kilts can be tricky.
I know. I was like, they will remember a man in a kilt, but I forgot I had to go back to wearing dresses. Now, there's so much to say. I mean, I look at the state of this country right now. There's 120 anti-trans bills have been passed in this country in 2025 alone. There's 598, according to the ACLU, that are on deck, anti-trans bills that are waiting to be passed. It is an extremely dire time. I mean, even in the UK, their Supreme Court just had a very landmark ruling that more or less dehumanized trans women in that country. So yeah, education is very important. I mean, for my work, I was a co-executive producer on a show on HBO Max called Legendary that is about a community that I come from. If you know about the ballroom community, if you've seen Pose or Paris is Burning, I've been in that scene for 13 years. I Vogue, I have thrown balls, I produced the biggest show about that. And I do oral histories with the community that made that community possible. And so I interview elders in the scene in New York City and around the world. I do research and education around this. I teach voguing workshops, and I was invited by the University College London to basically host a symposium around these topics. Education is so important because it is ultimately about sharing our stories as trans people. And I can't emphasize how important that is, because ultimately when we tell our stories, we're sharing our humanity with people. And I say this because as a writer, I mean, I was part of the DEI bubble. We had all these great LGBTQ plus shows that just evaporated after the strike, and we were told that we're too niche for middle America. And you have to wonder, like, I mean, I'm a human being.
And yet RuPaul's Drag Race is one of the top rated reality shows.
Right.
Doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we can all be fabulous, God forbid, I don't know. There's so much that our community has contributed, and yet we're constantly told that we're either too niche or, we're not mainstream enough. And for me, one of the things I look at, especially with all of this anti-trans legislation that's being passed, I mean, in the Scarametti decision, the New York Times was cited 7 times by Clarence Thomas. The New York Times does not have a single trans journalist on staff. They do not have a single trans editor on staff. I have written for the New York Times. I've pitched to them. I've written 2 pieces for them. There's other trans folks who are journalists out there in the world. There's a Trans Journalists Association, right? And the reason why this happens is because there is, when you hear that word transphobia, right? When you break it down, the phobia is the fear that a trans person, someone who we've been taught in society to think is inferior to us, could actually be our equal. Could be as smart as you are, as pretty as you are, as funny as you are, or better yet, even more. Hello. So, really what it comes down to when we talk about the institutional oppression that our elders have fought against for decades for us, it is literally about getting trans people in those roles, in these institutions. I mean, I was the first black trans guy in the WGA. That is an institution. For me to be recognized with the credits that I have, and to climb that ladder, to get to the seat of power, to tell those stories, this is what it means. To educate is to get more of us in the door.
And it's also, for me, for all the trans people I know, they want to just tell tell the world that you've always been here. This isn't like a fad. This isn't like something, in the last 10 years, suddenly this community's come out of nowhere. Literally, you've been here the whole time.
Oh yeah, trans people have existed for a millennia. I mean, literally since Jesus Christ was in the building, there's been somebody who has cross-dressed, who has transgressed gender. And, again, when I talk about that thing of transphobia, sometimes, even me just being a trans man in the room, especially since I pass, a lot of people don't even know that I'm trans unless I say it, right? And that's part of the fear for these like extremists on the right, is that we don't know who to oppress, right? Because ultimately it's this pyramid, a hierarchy, right? Where there's cis, white, straight, wealthy men at the top and the rest of us at the bottom. And if I can't tell who's who, well then, who am I going to oppress? Well, and not only that, but we are living not only in our truth, but in the truth, which is that gender is a spectrum. That this idea, that's the other thing. I was talking to a friend about this. I find this so interesting. Every other facet of our humanity is on a spectrum. Our hair color, our skin color, our eye colors, so many aspects of our genetics, and somehow there's only two genders, really. And I really want to emphasize that there's a lot of this pseudoscience that's being brought in, and like the last time I see that we've seen this was in the 19th century, phrenology. You see this kind of pseudoscience that says that black people are inferior to white people, and then we spend decades trying to fight back against that. That's also, I would like to say, just really emphasizing how important it is for trans people to tell our own stories, because it gives humanity back to us when you know us, I think about a show like Will and Grace over 20 years ago, literally changed the face of what it meant to be a gay person in the world, because people got to know gay people through TV. The Jeffersons brought black people into people's homes where they got to know them. We need to do the same thing, especially in this industry of having trans people in our homes so we get to know them. That's the power of media. That's the power of letting us actually narrate who we are and not letting other people do that for us.
Yes, thank you so much. There's a lot of fear, so much fear that comes with not knowing and understanding. And to your point, when you hear someone's story, it's hard to feel scared once you realize, oh, we're just the same. But thank you for everything you're doing. You're a real role model. And Diego, not to leave you to the end, that was not intentional, I promise. So Diego, you are a special kind of hero yourself. You've been nearly a lifelong advocate for disability awareness since you were a child growing up in Mexico, and you were a member of your country's Paralympic junior swim team. Congratulations, that's very special. You have talked about something really important, a giant obstacle that you see facing disabled people, which is, quote, many people with disabilities aren't sure what benefits they're entitled to. Understanding your rights is very important, which seems so basic, and I think you're right. I think there's so much confusion. How has the battle for equality and visibility for disabled people changed since you were young? And what are the biggest challenges facing your community now, today in the US and around the world? Because this is not just an us problem, this is a global challenge. And I'd love to know how you see things have changed, but also what are the biggest pressing issues today?
Wow, tough act to follow, tough question. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Really excited to be here. I thought it was really interesting what Dolores was saying about the bathrooms and the progress that has been made in that space. To this day, and this month, the 26th of July, is the 35th anniversary of the ADA. 35 years after the ADA, there are still people that cannot use the bathrooms in airplanes, in hotels, because of inaccessibility. 35 years later. And so when we talk about disability rights, and when we talk about access, we are behind many of the communities that we're talking about today, because disability has not been recognized as a part of diversity, right? I was born in the States by accident. My parents, who are Mexicans, were shopping, and I was born 6 months and a half into my mom's pregnancy. She jokes and says that I've always been really stubborn, even before I was born. And so as a result, I have CP, which primarily affects my walking skills. And so I grew up in Mexico, facing a lot of barriers, right? We don't have legislation like the Americans with Disabilities Act, like the Individualized Education Act, many of which are threatened right now, many of those legislations, right? But we didn't have that in Mexico. So I grew up thinking, well, there's this lack of infrastructure, and so that leads to isolation, all of that. That's why I became sort of a lifelong advocate for disability rights. I come to the States for college thinking, okay, in the States, there are things like the ADA, there are, ramps, curb cuts. My life is going to be completely different. Lo and behold, I come and the same discrimination that I was facing in Mexico, we were facing here. And that gets to your question, which is, what is the biggest challenge that disabled people are facing? The biggest challenge, yes, access is a part of that, but the underlying issue behind that is that society still doesn't recognize disability as part of human diversity. We don't see how disability can be synonymous with creativity, tenacity, resiliency. As a disabled person, I have to figure out, how do I get dressed in the morning? How do I drive? How do I communicate, effectively? And that can be a competitive advantage for business, for innovation. And so that's the core of the work that I do now. I lead the largest accelerator for founders with disabilities, really thinking about how do we foster that creativity, that innovation, so that the next generation of disabled leaders recognize their disability as a competitive advantage for innovation.
Wow. I feel very humble sitting among you. This is really extraordinary. So with the 5 or so minutes that we have left, I just want every person on this stage, very briefly, as succinctly as possible, to tell us one thing that each of us can do when we get home tonight to help the communities that you represent. Dolores, what is one thing you want everyone in this room to do when they get home or in the morning?
Well, again, I said it a little while ago, all of us becoming organizers and messengers, so we can take that responsibility and be very vocal and start spreading these messages of the support that people need, and that we can really save our democracy, because we are in a very crucial moment, critical moment, that we are losing our democracy. And make sure that the people that we know, our families, our neighbors, organizations, that everybody is civically involved. We need everybody to know that they have a responsibility, again, to organize their neighbors, form a committee in your neighborhood to get people registered to vote and to get people to vote. I mean, the way that my organization works, the Dolores Huerta Foundation, we don't really give grants, we kind of try to receive them, actually.
That's the better arrangement. I like that.
Because then we hire organizers, we send them into communities. They have house meetings with people, and they talk about the issues, they talk about the problems that they might have, and the idea is to make them responsible, to make them understand that they have to get out there and solve the issues in their community, that they know what the problems are, and they know what the solutions are, and not just sit there and wait for somebody to come in and solve the issues for them. And this is a way that they build their leadership. Once they analyze the situation, then they prioritize, and then they go out there. And so many of the people that we have organized, they have millions of dollars in infrastructures, lawsuits that we have filed because of racial discrimination in schools, lawsuits that we have filed because of the way that many of our voting districts are drawn. And so, we have to fight for representation at every level, but making people understand that they have to be part of the solution, that they are the ones that can make the difference. And that's what we really have to do. We have to, as I said before, all of us become organizers, become messengers. And I don't know, I sometimes say to people, what if we would have been in Germany when Hitler was coming to power? What would we have done to make sure that our Jews in the neighborhood would not be sent to camps to get incinerated, So we're kind of at that stage right now. So all of us have to say, what can I do? And I have to do more. Whatever you're doing now, you've got to do a lot more, because we are at this critical moment in our society.
Thank you, Dolores. And Sydney, what is one thing that we can all do to help trans people see themselves and feel more protected?
We need real allyship, and that means standing with us. That means advocating on our behalf when we're not in the room. That means falling back when we are in the room and passing the mic so we can speak. I want to give a couple of shout outs of places where folks can find information from actual trans reporters, people on the ground, people like Chase Strangio, who's at ACLU, people like Amara Jones at Translash, Thomas Page McBee, Raquel Willis. These are all phenomenal trans journalists. Devin Norell. Also support trans storytelling. Zachary Drucker has a new film on HBO called Enigma that is about trans history. Also River Gallo is a trans and intersex activist and filmmaker who has a film out right now called Pony Boy. Also follow me and my work. At Sydney Baloue, you can find me on Instagram and you could find my website and support my work, because I'm also doing documentation, research, and history to really make it clear we've been here, we will be here, and we need your help and support to make sure we can be here in the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sydney. I'm getting the signal from backstage that we need to wrap. So Eric, 10-second pitch.
Super brief. I appreciate it. I think everybody can contribute to the vision of helping foster youth. So you can look up Together California. And I think it's not just about donations, although we will not turn them down, like Ms. Huerta said. But I think there are opportunities to provide in-kind support, provide mentorship, and just get involved. And I think everybody can make a difference, because it's not just the foster youth, these are all of our children.
Thank you. And Diego, you want to close us out?
Last word, the pressure's on.
Yes.
So the one thing that folks can do is whatever level you are, organization you are, fund disabled innovations, fund disabled work. Because when we think about it, disability is the largest minority in the world. 1 in 4 people have a disability, and you can acquire disability at any point in time. So by funding disability work and supporting disabled entrepreneurs or disabled innovations, you're essentially supporting yourself 10, 20 years, 30 years down the line. So thank you.
Thank you so much for coming, everyone. Thank you. Say.
Can we do a chat?
Oh, sure.
I would like to ask everybody to stand first, okay? And some of you know this routine, but I'm going to be asking you 2 questions, and I want you to really shout the answers. And the first question I'm going to ask you who's got the power? And I want you to say, we've got the power. Then I'm going to say, what kind of power? And I want you to shout, people power. But we want to shout that so loud so the haters can hear us, okay? Okay, let's do it. Who's got the power? We got the power. What kind of power? People power. Are we going to use our people power to stop the fascism, to save our democracy, to save the people in our country and in the world? What do we say? ¿Se puede? Sí, se puede. ¿Se puede? Sí, se puede. Okay, let's all close with an organized hand clap that says "Sí se puede," which means yes, I can. That means yes, we can. Let's go. Sí se puede.